Hello, everybody. Welcome. My name is Joegiese. These are my sweets. Here's some gear. And this. Oh, I dropped one. I've been trying this like 15 times and I dropped one. Finally had a good beginning. This is Sweet Gear Videos. Thanks for hanging out. I'll be right back. 30-second rule. So this is where the theme is supposed to go. Cool people have themes, but I don't have one yet. So that's where it's going to go in the future, just so you know. Anyway, so thanks for watching all my other videos. I did one a day for about a week, and then I'm going to release one, I think, every Monday. We're going to go for that. So we'll see what happens. Thanks for coming back. Thanks for watching the other videos, and thanks to everybody who sent me some feedback and some comments and all that. And the kind of big thing that everybody mentioned is that they wanted more visuals. They wanted more like scribbles or graphics or something like that. And I don't really have a fancy computer interface thingy that'll let me do that, so I'm just going to use a legal pad. And I figured we'd start today off with some. I kind of started this off already. This is Donald Trump being eaten by a T-Rex. So there he is. Wait, hang on. This is backwards. There it is. Okay, there's his hair, and you can see there's like these flames. It's almost flames because it's, he's starting to breathe. And then this T-Rex has a ear up here. I'm not sure if that's actually where T-Rexes kept their ears, or even if they had ears. They had to have ears. But anyway, that's where it was in my graph. So he's getting eaten by a T-Rex. Now we're all on the same page. Cool. I'm going to get my M&Ms out of the frame there. So let's talk about connectors. There's probably 10,000 different audio connectors out there. We're going to focus on the handful that are like modern standards that are going to get you like 95% of the way there. Pretty much everything you're going to run across in the music or production world is going to fall into the category of one of these connectors. So we'll talk a bit about cable, mostly the connections. So this is kind of the simple granddaddy to everything. There was the RCA connector, which was an unbalanced two-point connector. And then this is the most common kind of basic standard starting off point pro audio connector, and this is the TS phone plug or quarter-inch jack or guitar plug, as a bunch of different names for the same thing, but this is what you got. 2 points of connection, kind of like an RCA cable on the back of a stereo or whatever. It's for an unbalanced cable or speaker cable, and this is what it looks like. It's quarter-inch wide, approximately, and you've got a tip here. You can see that. Yeah, there's a tip there. Then there's this little insulator ring that isolates the tip from this part, which is called the sleeve. So there's one connection, two connections, right? So the inside of the jack that this goes into has a little plug or a little bent metal arm that sits on this place here in this little dent, this divot. It's not a dent. It's a little divot that runs around here. It sits in there, and then there's another piece that touches this part, the sleeve, and those are your two connections. The cable that would be hooked up to this would have a center conductor, that's the signal, which is connected to the tip, and then there'd be a wrap, spiral, or a braid around the outside, that's the shield or the ground, and that's what's connected to the sleeve. So that's an unbalanced cable. This is what comes out of every guitar in the world for the most part. Anything unbalanced is this. A lot of speaker cabs use this, and these are called phone jacks because this is what a phone operator actually used to use to patch. If you called somebody, they would patch you here, and they'd have the other end of the cable, and they'd patch it to somebody else. And they started the phone companies needed more connections on a big switchboard or switchboard I think they were called, And so they just shrunk the connector, and they shrunk it to roughly half the size, and they called it the tiny telephone, or the TT plug. So those are still really common in studio patch bays. Didn't talk about that in my patch bay video because all I have is 1/4 inch here. But TT or Bantam style connectors are used for that pretty commonly. But it's half the size of this. It's roughly the same length, but it's half the diameter. So there's your TS plug. One of the downsides, since it's unbalanced, these cables would build up capacitance over a long, if you had a long length of a cable, like if you had 100 feet or 200 feet of it, it would actually roll off some high frequencies, and you'd get some signal loss, and it was really prone to picking up noise. Even on shorter cable runs, it could pick up buzzes from other pieces of equipment or other electrical things. So they came up with a way around that to kind of combat that environment. And we came up with this. This is a balanced connector, uses balanced cabling, and it's still 1/4 inch, but you can see there's 2 little insulator rings on there. And so you've got a tip, then you've got a ring of metal, and then you've got the sleeve down here. So this is called a TRS instead of TS. Tip ring sleeve, tip sleeve. Okay, so this actually has 3 connections on the inside. Takes 3 connections on the plug end, and you've got 2 signal leads, positive and negative, which is the tip and the ring, and then the shield or the ground is the sleeve here. So I've got a piece of cable without a connector on the end here. This is Belden microphone cable, and you can see there's 3 wires here. Can you see that? Maybe? Yeah, perfect. So there's 3 wires. There's 2 that have little rubber jackets on them. There's purple and white. And then there's a third one here. That's just a bare wire. That's the shield. So you would connect one to the hot, the cold. And then there's your sleeve there. And the 2 connectors, or the 2 conductors down the middle that have jackets, those are twisted together. It's called twisted pair. And those twist a bunch a bunch of times down the length, and that provides really excellent noise rejection, and that creates what's called a balanced audio cable. And so that could run much longer distances without picking up noise, and has less loss of high frequency in it. The TRS connectors, what you put on the end of this, so that's common for a lot of pro audio stuff, but kind of the big granddaddy, the standard of pretty much everything, every microphone, almost every microphone, and almost all pro audio gear is going to have an XLR connector on it. And if you look, that has 3 pins, just like the 3 wires or the 3 connections on a TRS, except the XLR cables lock, which is really cool. So you've got whereas a TS cable or a TRS cable here, the 2 ends are the same. On an XLR cable, you have a male end, which has the pointy outies, and the female end, which has the pointy innies, right? So there's 3 pins on each side, and those are wired up together. You can't see it on the female very well because this is a crappy camera, but there you go. So those are the 3 pins, and they're numbered. If you could see inside, they have a 1, 2, and 3. So pin 1 is always the ground or the shield, so that's connected to the sleeve. Pin 2 is the hot, so that's the tip, and pin 3 is the cold, that's the ring. So that's how you would wire these cables up. If you see there's like the 2 guys are in a row there, and then there's the third dude out. He's kind of hanging up there. The top, odd man out, that's always pin 3, right? So it's really easy to figure that out. And then they're numbered 1 and 2 on the inside, and this is numbered 1, 2, and 3 on this side as well. These are Neutrik connectors, so they have the benefit of Neutrik is the brand. They have the benefit of this has a little waterproof seal here. There's a rubber gasket on there, so when you plug it into something else, you get a watertight seal. I don't think you can fully submerge it, but it'll be fine in the rain, if you're doing outdoor concerts or something. And also XLRs are great because they have a little springy bit here and a little latchy bit in there. So you plug them together and they lock, and it makes a really strong connection. So that's super cool. XLR is standard, like I said, for almost every microphone under the face of the sun. Any snake is going to be XLR, and most pro audio gear has XLR ins and outs, whether it's microphone or line level. It doesn't matter. XLR connectors are also used for some digital signals like AES, which is 2 channels of digital audio. over one cable. They use an XLR connector. Some DMX, which is lighting control stuff, goes over 3-pin XLR. The cable is a little different. Some of those things you need different impedance cabling. So it gets a little bit tricky, but the connection is still an XLR for the most part on a lot of those. DMX also comes in 5 pins, so there's 5 pins in there, but that's separate thing. So that's an XLR connector. 3-pin balanced, great. So if we go back to the TS, the last kind of really common thing in audio is speaker wire. Speakers have a plus and a minus terminal on them. The back of any power amp is going to have a plus and a minus terminal. There's only 2 connectors, and since you're dealing with a wholly different range of like current flow and higher voltage than what comes out of a little microphone, you don't have the noise issues that you do amplifying the signal on a low output thing like a microphone where the output is a tiny little signal. Amplifiers are bigger, beefier signals, so we don't worry as much about the noise rejection of the cable. So usually they're not twisted. I'm sure somebody makes twisted pair speaker cable, but it's not really usually a thing. I mean, they are twisted down there, but or down the axis of the cable, but I don't think it's for noise rejection as much as makes the cable more flexible. So if you think of like a stereo, like a home stereo system, like home theater or whatever, usually you get like the zip cord, it's called, where there's 2 rubber wires and they're kind of glued together, and you split the ends off, and there's your red and black on the back of the speaker or whatever. That's all speaker wire is. But usually in like pro audio stuff, live events or in the studio, you want a speaker cable that has a jacket around the outside of it. It just means it's more durable. You can step on it, and the rubber jacket provides a lot of makes it easier to coil up. It looks nicer. It lays flat. The zip cord stuff tends to be all funky and weird. So, but that's all this is on the inside. This is 16 gauge, just 2 conductor. So you can see there, this is the bare copper end. This end has some solder on it from taking off a connector earlier. But that's all it is. There's just 2 conductors run here. They're slightly twisted together. And that's it. There's, you can hook this up. You can solder this to your TS connector, and usually the black or the positive would go to the tip, and the negative would go to the sleeve. There's your speaker connector. Our dear friends Neutrik that I mentioned before made the end-all be-all industry standard, pretty much ideal speaker connector. They upgraded from the TS to, they call it the Speak-On. This is an NL2 Speak-On connector, and this has a great benefit that it's a little bit bigger and more rugged housing, and it's a twist lock. So it's got this little lever on it that you pull to release it. You can plug it into the receptacle. The female Neutrik twist it, and it locks in place, so you can yank on it and it won't come free. And there's really big points of contact on the inside. There's 2 kind of metal rods inside that twist into place, and that's what connects your thing, your speaker to your amplifier. Your things connects the things, right? Speaker to amplifier get connected, so there's a lot of surface area to make a really good, strong connection, so you can run really, really high-powered speakers instead of having one little point of contact that you get with a TRS connector. This is an NL2, it's called, because it has 2 poles, 2 conductor. So this is for a regular standard speaker. They also make NL4, which you can buy this speaker wire that has 4 conductors, and you can connect 2 pairs to 1 amp, 2 pairs to a second amp, and then you can drive 2 speakers with the same cable. Or if you have a single speaker that's bi-amped, it has a high-frequency horn and a woofer in it, you can drive those from 2 separate amps and process them differently using a crossover, etc., and do an active system. They make NL8s, so you can have 8 pairs. You can do a 4-way speaker with 1 cable. You need 8-pair speaker wire, and they're a real pain in the butt to wire up, but you can do it. I think they even go up to an NL. I don't know if they do an NL12. That would be nuts, but I think maybe they do. I should have looked that up. But NL8 is kind of the biggest that you'll most likely run across. NL4 is the standard that you see pretty much 9 times out of 10. So that's really cool. Twist lock, and they make waterproof versions. They also make power conductors or connectors for AC cords. It's called PowerCon. Twist lock thing. Really, really cool. So that's Neutrik. If you're buying cables, Don't buy anything that doesn't have Neutrik connectors on the end. They're just the nicest. They're the best. It's my opinion, but also I think I'm right. They're just really, really good. They blow everybody else out of the water. They're reliable, and they're not that much more expensive, so it's just a good design. They have good strain relief inside here. This is called the boot. Inside the boot, that's got a nice system that clamps the cable, so if you tug on it, you're not pulling on the solder joints, you're pulling on the jacket itself. It's really, really well thought out. So, Neutrik cables. Here's another little quickie. Here's a TRS cable on the end of, or connector on the end of this cable, and then it splits. The other end of the cable has two TS's. So one is labeled tip, one is labeled ring. So the shields are shared. All of the sleeves are connected to each other down one shield, but the tip of the TRS is connected to the tip on the gray one here, and the ring is connected to the tip of the orange cable. So if I plug this into a stereo source, I can split the left and right channels out to two separate lines, and I can run those into two separate channels on a console or whatever. So this is common for plugging in like an iPod or something like that. Well, an iPod, this end would be a TRS, but a mini. We call it a mini or an 1/8 inch or a mini jack. It's the same. It's a TRS, but it's half the size. So it's a lot shorter, and it's only an 1/8 inch wide instead of a 1/4 inch wide. So anyway, that's a good way to split up a stereo thing, or these are also used for inserts on an analog console that has insert points. Some have a separate send and return jack. Some have the send and return on a TRS. So it's one connector, and there's your send and return. So that's a little note on that. Another thing that you'll see sometimes is phones will have, like if you get the little earbuds that plug in and the mic, they have the built-in little microphone. Those use a TRRS cable. So you've got one line for left, one line for right, one line for the microphone, and they all share a ground or a shield. So that has actually 4 conductors, a tip, 2 rings, and then a sleeve. So you'll see that from time to time, but most audio gear doesn't connect that way. And if you plug a TRS into a phone that has a TRRS, all you'll get out is the audio. You can't send audio back in, and that's usually all you need, is just to play the phone back through the PA to hear stuff, whatever. So my last final little soapbox here is, if you're super into this stuff, and if you're taking it seriously and doing this as a career or as a serious hobby, I highly recommend buying a soldering iron and learning how to make your own cables. I soldered pretty much everything in the studio, and it's a great skill to have. It's great to be able to fix things if they break, because they probably will. And I find that it saves a lot of money. I think it's therapeutic to solder, and it saves a ton of money. I buy the high-end Neutrik connectors. They're not that much more expensive than the cheapy alternatives. And that way you know the quality level that your rig is wired to, and it's just really, really worthwhile, I think. It's good to know. I don't subscribe to the fancy high-end boutique cables, or these cables sound better than these cables. That's not really my cup of tea. I tend to think of it a little bit more scientifically. Cable doesn't have a direction. It's an AC current going back and forth up and down the line. So some guitar cables have like little arrows pointing, like this side needs to go to the guitar and this side needs to go to the amplifier. I think that's kind of nonsense. Some people claim that they can hear the difference. Maybe they can, but I don't buy it at all. So for what it's worth, just some food for thought. You can read about it online and all that, but feel free to debate me in the comments. But I think that's kind of nonsense and just a waste of your money, honestly. If you have a good quality cable that's easy to work with, that coils nicely, that has the right impedance for what purpose you're using it for, and a good quality connector that has a good termination, like you've soldered it well inside, that's as good as any other cable in the world. I have cables that I made 10 years ago that are still working. They get used every day. It doesn't take a lot. You don't have to spend a ton of money to have a good cable. So that's just me. I think that that's a really good way to save time and save money. So that's all I got for today. So like and subscribe, send me comments, send me emails, hang out. I'm on Facebook and all those cool things wherever you're watching this. So tune in, let me know anything you want to hear about, anything you want to talk about. And thanks for watching. I appreciate it. Thanks, guys. Cheers.